You know what they say about making deals with humans? Don't. But nobody told Ambassador Claxon that little nugget of wisdom before he fired off what he thought was a simple distress call to Earth's Galactic Relations Department. Picture this, Claxon, a 7-foot-tall stick insect with anxiety issues and a tendency to over-apologize, standing in the ruins of what used to be Zephyria Prime. His homeworld was dying faster than a smartphone battery, and 3 million Zephyrian refugees were camping in makeshift settlements that made a trailer park look like a 5-star resort. "We just need basic shelter," Claxon muttered to himself as he typed the formal request on his diplomatic communicator. His forearms were shaking so badly he had to type with two, while the other two held stress balls. Maybe some emergency tents, perhaps a few portable buildings. Nothing fancy. The message he sent was a masterpiece of diplomatic understatement. Honorable human representatives, the Zephyrian people respectfully request temporary shelter assistance for approximately 3 million displaced citizens. Any aid would be gratefully received. Most humble regards. Ambassador Claxon. He hit send and immediately started second-guessing himself. Should he have mentioned the timeline? Should he have specified that they needed basic, simple shelter? Nah, he thought. Humans seemed reasonable enough. They'd probably send a few cargo ships with prefab buildings and call it a day. The response came back in exactly 47 minutes. Claxon nearly jumped out of his exoskeleton when his communicator chimed. Ambassador Claxon, your request has been received and approved. Our assessment team will arrive within 72 hours to conduct initial surveys. Full assistance package to follow. We've got you covered. Regards, Earth Galactic Relations Department, Emergency Response Division. Claxon stared at the message. Assessment team, surveys, full assistance package. He'd asked for tents, not a corporate restructuring. But humans were probably just thorough, right? Right. As he shared the news with the Refugee Council, there was cautious optimism. Elder Nexus, whose wisdom was matched only by his ability to worry about everything simultaneously, raised a concern. Did they specify what kind of assistance? Nexus asked, his mandibles clicking nervously. They said they've got us covered, Claxon replied. How complicated could temporary shelter be? Oh, sweet summer alien child. If Claxon had known anything about human history, he might have realized that this is the same species that turned a simple sandwich into a 3-hour cooking show, transformed coffee into a religion with its own vocabulary, and somehow made buying a mattress more complicated than nuclear physics. But Claxon didn't know any of that. He went to sleep that night thinking his biggest problem was figuring out where to put a few dozen emergency shelters. He was about to learn that when humans say we've got you covered, they mean it in the same way that a tsunami covers a beach. Exactly 72 hours later, Claxon was rudely awakened by what sounded like the sky falling. He scrambled outside his temporary shelter to find 3 massive human ships descending through the atmosphere with all the subtlety of a marching band in a library. The first person to step off the lead ship was a human built like a refrigerator with a personality to match. He wore a hard hat that somehow managed to look both practical and aggressive, and carried a clipboard that he wielded like a weapon of mass organization. Ambassador Claxon? Brick Morrison, Senior Infrastructure Development Specialist. He grabbed Claxon's hand with a grip that could crack walnuts. I've reviewed your preliminary site data and, buddy, we've got our work cut out for us. Site data? Claxon squeaked. I just asked for some basic shelter. Oh, we're way past basic, Brick laughed, apparently thinking this was good news. We're talking about sustainable community development here. You can't just throw up some tents and call it home. Where's your water treatment? Your power grid? Your waste management systems? Before Claxon could point out that refugees typically don't require municipal planning, another human approached. This one was smaller but radiated the kind of confidence usually reserved for people who wrestle black holes for fun. Commander Zara Cross, Advanced Security Assessment, she said, snapping a salute that made Claxon instinctively stand straighter. We've completed the initial perimeter sweep. Hostile threats minimal. Defensive positions non-existent. Recommendation: immediate fortification of key strategic points. Fortification? Claxon's voice cracked like a teenage human's. We're refugees, not soldiers. Everyone's a soldier when properly motivated, Zara replied with the kind of smile that suggested she found explosions relaxing. Don't worry, we'll have this place locked down tighter than Fort Knox by Thursday. Claxon had no idea what Fort Knox was, but it sounded ominous. Brick was already marching around the refugee camp, pointing at things and speaking rapidly into a device that looked like it could hack the Pentagon. Johnson, I need geological surveys on Sector 7. Martinez, start plotting the utility corridors. And somebody get me a topographical analysis of this entire continent. We're building a city here, people. A city? Claxon followed Brick like a lost puppy. I thought we were talking about temporary shelter. Temporary is just permanent without proper planning, Brick declared, as if this made perfect sense. Look, Ambassador, you've got 3 million people here. They need homes, not camping equipment. They need schools, hospitals, shopping centers, recreational facilities. Maybe a nice park with a lake. A lake? But every good community needs a water feature. Boosts property values. Claxon watched in growing horror as more humans emerged from the ships carrying equipment that looked less like emergency aid and more like the tools needed to terraform planets. One human, who couldn't have been older than 12 in Earth years, was practically vibrating with excitement as he directed the unloading of what appeared to be a small factory. That's Gizmo, Brick explained. Best engineer we've got. Kid can build a fusion reactor out of paper clips and determination. Why would we need a fusion reactor? For the city, obviously. By the end of the first day, the humans had set up a command center that looked like NASA's mission control, completed soil samples across a 50-square-mile area, and somehow convinced half the Zephyrian Council that they needed to discuss municipal zoning laws. Claxon sat in his humble shelter that evening, watching humans work through the night with the dedication of caffeinated bees. He was starting to suspect that asking humans for help was like asking a dragon for a small loan. Technically, they'd give you what you asked for, but the terms and conditions were going to be absolutely terrifying. 3 days later, Claxon woke up to discover that the humans had somehow constructed what appeared to be a small moon in orbit around his refugee camp. That's Construction Platform Alpha, Gizmo explained cheerfully as he bounced around like a caffeinated rabbit. We'll be manufacturing the habitat domes up there and dropping them down as we complete each residential sector. Habitat domes? Claxon stared at the massive orbital structure that was definitely not there when he went to sleep. How big are these domes exactly? Oh, each one houses about 50,000 people, Gizmo said casually, as if this was the most normal thing in the universe. We're planning 12 primary residential domes, plus commercial, industrial, educational, and recreational sectors. Should have the whole city operational within 6 months. Claxon did the math. 50,000 times 12 that's enough space for 600,000 people. We only have 3 million refugees. Right now, Brick interjected, appearing with his ever-present clipboard and an expression that suggested he'd solved world hunger while having breakfast. But you've got to think about growth, Ambassador. Population expansion, immigration from other worlds, economic development. We're building for the future here. What future? We're refugees. Not after we're done with you, Brick grinned. By the time we finish this project, you'll be the most advanced civilization in this sector. Other species will be sending their refugees to you. As if summoned by the mention of advanced technology, the first habitat dome began its descent from orbit. Claxon had expected something like a large tent. What came down was essentially a small city enclosed in a transparent dome that gleamed like a jewel against the sky. The dome settled into place with the precision of a surgeon performing brain surgery. Immediately, smaller construction vehicles swarmed around it like mechanical ants, connecting power cables, water lines, and communication arrays that looked advanced enough to contact parallel dimensions. Each dome is completely self-sufficient, Gizmo explained, practically glowing with pride. Atmospheric processors, renewable energy systems, hydroponic gardens, waste recycling that's so efficient it actually improves the environment. Oh, and we included a movie theater in each one because, entertainment is important. A movie theater, Klaxon repeated numbly. Two, actually. We figured you might want to show both human and Zephyrian films, cultural exchange and all that. Over the following weeks, Klaxon watched his simple refugee camp transform into something that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie about utopian civilizations. The humans worked with the relentless efficiency of a species that had apparently decided sleep was optional and coffee was a food group. They didn't just build shelter, they built an entire ecosystem. Parks appeared overnight, complete with imported Earth flora that somehow thrived in Zephyrian soil. A university materialized, staffed with human professors who were genuinely excited about sharing knowledge with alien minds. Shopping districts sprouted like mushrooms after rain, featuring stores that sold everything from basic necessities to luxury items that most Zephyrians had never imagined existed. We included a spa, Zara mentioned during one of her security briefings, which had evolved from simple perimeter reports to comprehensive urban planning sessions. Figured your people might need to relax after everything they've been through. You built us a spa? 3 spas, actually, and a water park, and a golf course. What's golf? Merrier. You'll love it. It's the perfect combination of frustration and fresh air. The most bewildering part was how genuinely happy the humans seemed about all of this. They weren't building a refugee camp, they were building their masterpiece. Every dome that descended from orbit was met with cheers from the construction crews. Every system that came online was celebrated like a personal victory. Klaxon found himself standing on the observation deck of the Central Administrative Dome, staring out at a city that rivaled the greatest achievements of Zephyrian civilization at its peak. In the distance, he could see humans and Zephyrians working together, the aliens slowly adapting to the idea that their temporary shelter included amenities that most species considered luxuries. Nice view, huh? Brick appeared beside him, somehow managing to look satisfied and ready to build something else simultaneously. It's magnificent, Klaxon admitted. But I have to ask, why did you do all this? We only asked for basic shelter. Brick looked genuinely puzzled. This is basic shelter, Ambassador. What did you expect us to do, leave you living in tents? And that's when Klaxon realized that somewhere in the vast cultural gulf between species, the word basic had gotten lost in translation. Just when Klaxon thought things couldn't get more complicated, the sky exploded with ships that made the construction vessels look like toys. The lead ship was approximately the size of a small moon and bristled with enough weaponry to sterilize solar systems. It settled into orbit with the casual menace of a lion taking a nap in a kindergarten. Behind it, an entire fleet of similarly intimidating vessels arranged themselves in a formation that somehow managed to look both protective and terrifying. The man who materialized in the transport beam looked like he'd been carved from granite by someone with a very generous definition of human proportions. His uniform was so crisp it could cut glass, his jaw could break diamond, and his smile suggested he found interstellar warfare relaxing. Admiral Rex Thunder, Earth Defense Command, he announced, extending a hand that could probably crush asteroids. Heard you folks might need some security for your construction project. Security. Klaxon's voice had reached frequencies that only dogs and quantum physicists could hear. We're building a refugee settlement, not a military base. Same thing, really, Admiral Thunder replied with the cheerful confidence of someone who'd never encountered a problem that couldn't be solved with superior firepower. Can't have people shooting at your workers, can you? Nobody's shooting at our workers. Not anymore, they aren't, Thunder grinned, gesturing toward the fleet that was now conducting what appeared to be practice bombing runs on empty space. Preventive security, Ambassador. Best kind there is. Brick appeared, apparently unfazed by the arrival of enough military hardware to conquer small galaxies. Rex. Great timing. We're just finishing the municipal defense grid. Municipal defense grid? Klaxon felt his sanity departing like passengers from a sinking ship. Standard urban planning, Brick explained. Every good city needs proper security infrastructure. Can't have the residents worrying about hostile attacks while they're trying to enjoy their morning coffee. We don't drink coffee. You will, Thunder said confidently. We're introducing it gradually through the cafeteria systems. Give it 6 months, and your people will be as addicted as the rest of us. The conversation was interrupted by Gizmo, who practically materialized out of thin air with the boundless energy of a supernova having a good day. Admiral Thunder. Perfect timing. I finished installing the orbital defense platforms. Each one's equipped with enough firepower to crack moons, but they're also completely automated and powered by renewable energy sources. Eco-friendly planetary defense. Orbital defense platforms. Klaxon felt like he was trapped in a fever dream designed by military contractors. Every settlement needs proper air superiority, Thunder explained patiently. Plus, they double as communication relays and weather monitoring stations. Multi-purpose infrastructure. Very efficient. By this point, other alien governments had started taking notice of Earth's refugee assistance program. Klaxon's communication console was lighting up like a Christmas tree with increasingly panicked messages from various galactic powers. The Centauri Republic wanted to know why Earth was establishing a military base in neutral territory. The Vegan Collective was demanding explanations for the sudden appearance of human dreadnoughts. The Rigel Confederation was asking if this was the beginning of human territorial expansion. It's just refugee aid, Klaxon kept explaining to increasingly skeptical alien diplomats. They're helping us build temporary shelter. Temporary shelter doesn't require orbital bombardment platforms, the Centauri ambassador replied coldly. I don't think they see it that way, Klaxon admitted. The most surreal part was watching Admiral Thunder conduct his daily security briefings with the same casual professionalism most people reserved for discussing the weather. Perimeter secure, no hostile contacts, orbital superiority established, he'd report to Brick and Zara each morning. Though I did notice some Rigel scouts poking around the outer system. Sent a patrol to say hello. They left pretty quickly. Define say hello, Klaxon asked nervously. Standard greeting protocol. We hailed them, invited them for coffee, and coincidentally happened to be conducting target practice with our main guns at the time. Pure coincidence. Of course it was. The humans had somehow managed to turn refugee assistance into the most politely aggressive military operation in galactic history. They were building paradise and defending it with enough firepower to glass continents, but all while maintaining the cheerful efficiency of people who thought this was perfectly normal. Klaxon was beginning to understand that when humans decided to help someone, they didn't just solve the immediate problem. They solved all the problems, including problems you didn't know you had, problems you might have in the future, and problems that existed only in the theoretical realm of possibility. It was either the most generous act in galactic history or the most elaborate invasion ever attempted. Possibly both. The emergency session of the Galactic Council looked like a support group for species suffering from collective anxiety disorder. Representatives from 12 major civilizations sat around a holographic conference table, all staring at surveillance footage of what Earth was diplomatically calling Project New Home. Ladies, gentlemen, and various other classifications of sentient beings began Chancellor Vex of the Altair Consortium, his tentacles writhing with barely contained panic. We're here to address what can only be described as humanity's most audacious military expansion in recorded history. It's not military expansion, Claxon protested weakly from his corner seat. It's refugee assistance. The entire council turned to stare at him with the kind of expressions usually reserved for people who claim the moon is made of cheese. Ambassador Claxon, Chancellor Vex's voice dripped with diplomatic skepticism. Refugee assistance does not typically involve orbital battle stations, planetary defense grids, and enough military hardware to pacify the Andromeda Galaxy. On the main display screen, current footage from New Zephyria showed the completed city in all its impossible glory. Gleaming habitat domes stretched to the horizon, connected by transport tubes that moved with the efficiency of human engineering. Parks and recreational areas dotted the landscape like green jewels, while overhead, Admiral Thunder's fleet maintained what they cheerfully called neighborhood watch. Perhaps, suggested the Betelgeuse representative, we should hear from the humans directly. As if summoned by diplomatic necessity, Brick Morrison materialized in the center of the conference room via holographic projection. He was wearing his usual hard hat and carrying blueprints that appeared to be the size of small novels. "Afternoon, everyone," Brick said cheerfully, apparently oblivious to the fact that half the galaxy considered him a potential war criminal. "Sorry, I'm a bit late. We're breaking ground on the university campus expansion, and you know how it is with foundation work." Mr. Morrison, Chancellor Vex began carefully, "We need to discuss the scope of your, refugee assistance project." "Great. Always happy to talk shop," Brick replied, unfurling blueprints that seemed to go on forever. "So far we've completed 12 residential domes, 4 commercial districts, 2 industrial zones, a full university complex, 3 hospitals, a spaceport capable of handling heavy freight traffic, and a recreational area that includes what I'm pretty sure is the galaxy's first alien-compatible water park." "And the military installations?" "Oh, you mean the security infrastructure?" Brick looked genuinely puzzled. "Well, you can't build a proper city without basic safety measures. Fire department, police stations, emergency response systems, orbital defense platforms. Standard municipal planning?" "Orbital defense platforms are not standard municipal planning." The representative from Rigel practically shouted. "They are on Earth," Brick replied matter-of-factly. "How else do you protect your citizens from hostile action?" At that moment, Admiral Thunder's projection joined the conference, somehow managing to make his appearance seem both casual and militarily significant. "Gentlemen, ladies, assorted beings," Thunder nodded to the assembly. "I understand there are some concerns about our security protocols." Security protocols? Chancellor Vex's tentacles had started turning colors that probably indicated impending cardiac events. "Admiral, your fleet could conquer most star systems." "Could, but won't," Thunder replied with the patient tone of someone explaining quantum physics to a toddler. "We're just here to make sure nobody bothers the construction workers. Very simple mandate." "Your simple mandate involves enough firepower to sterilize planets." "Only if absolutely necessary," Thunder assured them. "We prefer diplomatic solutions. Speaking of which, would anyone like some coffee? We've got a great blend from the New Zephyria plantations. The refugees are really taking to agricultural development." The conference descended into chaos as various representatives tried to explain why turning refugee assistance into the construction of an interstellar superpower was problematic. Brick and Thunder responded to each concern with the cheerful efficiency of people who genuinely couldn't understand what the fuss was about. Finally, Elder Nexus of the Zephyrian Council requested permission to speak. The chamber fell silent as the old alien slowly rose to address the assembly. "Honorable representatives," Nexus began, "I have lived through the fall of our homeworld, the desperate flight of our people, and now the construction of a new home that surpasses our wildest dreams. In all that time, I have learned one fundamental truth about humans." He paused, looking around the assembly with eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. They don't know how to do anything small, he said simply. We asked for shelter, and they built us paradise. We needed safety, and they gave us the most secure city in the galaxy. They didn't do this because they wanted to conquer or control. They did it because when humans decide to help someone, they help completely. The chamber remained silent as the implications sank in. The question isn't whether Earth is planning galactic domination, Nexus continued. The question is whether the rest of us are ready to live in a galaxy where someone actually gives a damn about doing the right thing. And with that, the Great Galactic Misunderstanding began its slow transformation into the Great Galactic Realization. 6 months later, Ambassador Klaxon stood on the observation deck of New Zephyria Central Tower, sipping something the humans called coffee with alien-friendly additives, while watching his people go about their daily lives in what could only be described as the most accidentally successful city in galactic history. Below him, Zephyrians walked through parks that would make paradise jealous, attended universities that attracted scholars from across the galaxy, and worked in industries that had somehow made New Zephyria the most economically prosperous refugee settlement ever created. The humans had been right about one thing: other species were indeed sending their refugees here, not out of desperation, but because New Zephyria had become the gold standard for interstellar relocation services. Quite a view, isn't it? Brick appeared beside him, looking satisfied in the way that architects do when their buildings don't fall down and accidentally become legendary. It's magnificent, Klaxon admitted. Though I have to ask, did you know this would happen when you started? No? Not exactly, Brick replied thoughtfully. But we hoped. See, Ambassador, there's something you need to understand about humans. We don't help people because we expect something in return. We help people because that's what you do. The fact that it turned out this well is just a bonus. Through the transparent dome overhead, Admiral Thunder's fleet maintained its eternal vigil, the ships now serving as much as tourist attractions as defensive positions. The Admiral himself had settled into a routine of giving guided tours to visiting dignitaries, explaining human military philosophy with the enthusiasm of a hobby collector showing off vintage stamps. The fleet staying? Klaxon asked. Oh, absolutely, Brick nodded. Rex has decided this is the perfect posting. Gets to protect civilians, showcase human engineering, and introduce aliens to the wonders of Earth coffee. He's never been happier. As if summoned by the mention of his name, Admiral Thunder's voice came over the city-wide communication system. Attention residents of New Zephyria, this is your friendly neighborhood fleet commander. Today's security status completely boring, which is exactly how we like it. Weather looks good, orbital traffic is light. And the new batch of coffee beans from Agricultural Dome 7 is absolutely spectacular. Thunder out. Meet. Klaxon shook his head in amazement. You turned refugee assistance into a form of art. Nah, Brick replied modestly. We just did what humans do. We saw a problem, we fixed it, and then we kept fixing things until everything worked better than anyone expected. It's not art, it's just stubbornness with good intentions. As they watched, a transport arrived carrying the latest group of refugees, this time from the Arcturus system. They emerged from their ship looking tired, desperate, and overwhelmed by the gleaming city that would become their new home. Within minutes, they were surrounded by human volunteers and Zephyrian guides, all working together to help them begin their new lives. So what's next? Klaxon asked. Well, Brick consulted his ever-present clipboard. We've got applications from 6 other species for full relocation packages. The Betelgeuse government wants us to design their new capital city. And apparently, the Galactic Council is considering making New Zephyria the official model for interstellar humanitarian aid. And you'll do it all? Of course, Brick smiled. We're humans, Ambassador. Going big or going home isn't just our motto, it's our way of life. As the day shift ended and the city's lights began to twinkle like stars, Klaxon reflected on the most important lesson he'd learned about humanity. When you ask them for help, be prepared for them to solve not just your problem, but every problem you might ever have, plus a few you didn't know existed. The Zephyrians had asked for shelter and received a civilization. They'd requested temporary aid and been given a permanent home that was the envy of the galaxy. They'd sought refuge and found a future that exceeded their wildest dreams. And somewhere in Earth's bureaucracy, someone had filed a report classifying the entire operation as standard humanitarian assistance, which just went to show that human modesty was as excessive as everything else they did. New Zephyria hummed with life, protected by Admiral Thunder's fleet, designed by Brick's architectural genius, and powered by Gizmo's engineering marvels. It was a testament to what happened when humanity's greatest weakness, their complete inability to do anything halfway, became their greatest strength. As Klaxon headed home,